Hello, I'm Jesse Levine, Senior Advocacy Officer at Scholars at Risk. Welcome to Free to Think 2020, Scholars at Risk's virtual conference marking the release of our annual Free to Think report. The conference includes 5 geographically organized panels discussing academic freedom issues in China and Hong Kong, India, Yemen, Turkey, and Eastern Europe. It also includes a special session marking the close of SAR's 20th anniversary year, including the release of the report and presentation of SAR's Courage to Think Award. I thank everyone in the audience for joining us for this session and invite you to visit the conference page for the schedule and links to other sessions. I also invite audience members to use the comment function in Vimeo to share your questions. Please try to be brief to make it easier for the panelists to respond. Please also note that you may post your comment anonymously if you have privacy or security concerns. Audience members may use the like function in Vimeo to support a question, raising it to the top of the queue. This session is Academic Freedom and India's Clampdown on Dissent. I'll be your moderator. Attacks on higher education and academic freedom in India are at crisis levels. For the first 6 years of the Academic Freedom Monitoring Project, for example, we reported an average of about 11 attacks per year. That number spiked to 26 2 years ago, and this past year alone, we documented 71 separate attacks. These included attacks in Jammu and Kashmir, where the government shuttered universities and enacted one of the world's longest telecommunications blackouts, making academic work essentially impossible. They also included violence and arrests of student protesters throughout the country, and the use of national security laws to crack down on dissident scholars, all against a backdrop of growing and concerning nationalism. Despite these profound pressures, India's government is committed, at least in theory, to invest in universities and scientific research, and to make Indian higher education a leader on the world stage, a goal that cannot be accomplished without a free and open university space that values academic freedom. I can think of no two people better equipped to help us understand this complex and concerning situation than our two speakers. Nandini Sundar is Professor of Sociology at the Delhi School of Economics, Delhi University. Her recent publications include The Burning Forest, India's War in Bastar, and Academic Freedom in India, a Status Report 2020. She was awarded the Emphasis Prize for Social Sciences and Social Anthropology in 2010, the Esther Boserup Prize for Development Research 2016, and the Malcolm Adiseshaya Prize for Distinguished Contributions to Development Studies in 2017. Her public writings are available at nandinisundar.blogspot.com. Apurvanand Jha is a professor of Hindi at Delhi University and a widely published columnist and political commentator. His articles appeared in major Indian publications, including the Indian Express and The Wire. A longtime expert on higher education-related issues, Apurvanand worked with the Committee to advise on renovation and rejuvenation of higher education in India, to craft a new vision plan for the country's higher education sector. Among other books, Apurvanand is the editor of The Idea of a University, a compilation of essays by teachers and academics examining a range of subjects concerning the higher education space, including challenges to academic freedom, the history and evolution of Indian universities, and the impact of market forces on educational institutions. Each panelist will share brief opening remarks, after which we will have the opportunity for discussion and questions from the audience. And with that, Nandini, I give you the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Jesse, and I'm really happy to be participating in this event because, as Jesse said, academic freedom has never been a more important issue both globally and in India. Before I begin, I think it's important to just lay out a little bit of the landscape of Indian higher education because the political economy of this landscape matters to the question of academic freedom. India has about 993 universities and nearly 40,000 individual undergraduate colleges, of which 385 universities and about 78% of colleges are privately managed. In most of these private colleges, pay, tenure, and questions of academic freedom are scarce commodities. And most of them are run as business institutions rather than as centers of learning. So if tenure was created as an instrument to ensure academic freedom, the lack of tenure serves to ensure academic unfreedom. Secondly, in terms of the landscape of who attends universities or colleges, the upper or dominant castes and classes are hugely overrepresented in higher education. And this contributes to what can be studied, the whole structure of what can be taught, what can be studied, and what can be said. So, for instance, indigenous people or scheduled tribes in India have a gross enrollment ratio of only 17.2% compared to the national GER of 26.3%. And Muslims, who are among the most victimized communities in India today, both economically, socially, and culturally, and politically, constitute only 5.2% of the college and university student population compared to their overall percentage of about 14% in the population. So in terms of academic freedom, we're already removing large sections of the population and large sections of the higher education institutions from the discussion right at the beginning in terms of access and management. Since 2014, however, as Jesse pointed out, since the current Bharatiya Janata Party or the current government came to power, we've seen a sharp decline in academic freedom. And this was something that was seen before only during the brief period of the emergency from 1975 to 77, and we now have some sort of undeclared emergency. For instance, the Academic Freedom Index prepared by the VDEM Institute shows a sharp decline. Jesse's pointed out that the Scholars at Risk research project also shows a sharp decline. So I think by several objective standards, academic freedom is extremely endangered in India. Now, as someone who has worked on counterinsurgency against indigenous populations fighting for their rights over the last decade, it's really quite striking how so many of the practices that are employed in that kind of counterinsurgency are also now being employed against universities. In the RSS vision, the RSS is the Hindu supremacist semi-fascist organization which controls the current government. The prime minister and many of the ministers in his cabinet are members of the RSS, and it really doesn't believe in the Indian constitution, and it wants a Hindu supremacist country instead. So if you look at their literature and the kind of propaganda that they have been working on over the last decade or so, or at least the last 6 years, they've been trying to paint India's leading public universities as centers of terror, of what they call Naxal or urban left-wing terror, coupled with Islamic jihadi terror. So we now have our prime universities, which in the national rankings within India and globally are the most recognized, being painted as anti-national, seditious, and institutions that need to be conquered rather than encouraged. Now, the way that this counterinsurgency operates in universities takes on 5 forms, 5 elementary aspects, I should say. The first is erasure. The second is demonization or delegitimization. The third is capture. The fourth is surveillance. And the fifth is depoliticization. I think many of these issues are common to universities worldwide, where you have right-wing authoritarian governments, where what passes for knowledge increasingly is information that is spread through WhatsApp or other forms of social media. And increasingly in conversations with ordinary people, you find that they refuse to accept that there is anything like an objective version of history. For instance, one will constantly be told that Gandhi was responsible for partition, that Nehru killed Gandhi rather than the RSS being responsible for the killing of Gandhi. And this kind of worldview that is spread through WhatsApp, or through what the Hindi journalist Ravish calls WhatsApp University, has now begun to actually replace what we disseminate through university structures. So there's an active right-wing denigration of established academic and political consensus and procedures of evidence and academic standards. The second is demonization or delegitimization. And as the Scholars at Risk report points out, there have been a number of attacks on universities. M.M. Kalburgi, who was a former vice-chancellor and a noted Kannada scholar, was killed for his views, for his scholarship, actually. Students have been arrested, faculty are being, we have currently in jail faculty who are over 70, some of them are 80 years old, suffering from serious injuries, disability, etc., but they are not being given bail. It's much harder for foreign scholars to get research visas. Books have been censored from university syllabi, etc. And there have been a number of arrests as well. The worst, as was pointed out, is the situation of Kashmiri scholars who have not had 4G internet access for over a year. And not only do they actually find it impossible to function within Kashmir, but even outside, there are attacks on Kashmiri scholars, and it has been impossible for the last decade at least to have any seminars on Kashmir or the Maoist situation in central India. The third aspect of this counterinsurgency against universities is capture of these institutions by people who are close to the ruling party and who have no other qualification other than being members of the RSS. The fourth is surveillance, and increasingly not just university authorities or the government are dictating what universities should study, but we even have the police telling us, what PhD students should be reading or what they. So there was a case, for instance, of Sharjeel Imam, and the charge sheet against him said that he had been reading the works of noted political scientist Paul Brass, and this was, bigoted literature which he should not have been reading. So we now have the police deciding what PhD students should be reading. And finally, there is depoliticization, which is, the end result of this long attack on universities. So people are scared of speaking up. They're scared of doing anything that might affect their tenure, might affect their other prospects. And not only is there this atmosphere of fear, but there's an increasing precaritization of university jobs. So, for instance, over 40% of the jobs in Delhi University, where I work, are contractual. Students are increasingly being denied studentships. And the whole prioritization of global ranking and the idea that India should somehow excel internationally is being given priority over any kind of, actual discussion of what India's university needs. And this is in any case not going to be possible to achieve. So I'm just going to stop at that, and I hope we can take up more issues in the Q&A. Thank you.
Purvanand, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Nandini, for giving the overview of the Indian university scene, and it helps us to take this discussion forward. What Nandini has already explained is now the objective of universities in India and higher education institutions, including other research institutions, is not to pursue or to engage in the pursuit of knowledge freely, but the objective is to foster an ideology of nationalism as propounded or as advocated by the ruling establishment, which is controlled by the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, not a semi-fascist organization, as Nandini mildly put it. It's actually a fascist organization. It's a majoritarian ideology which this organization is trying to impose on the universities and spread through the universities and their programs, and not only universities, but I would also like to point out that the research institutions and funding institutions like Indian Council of Historical Research and Indian Council of Social Science Research, the research projects now that they are approving must meet the requirement of fostering this spirit of majoritarian nationalism. So all research projects are now seen from this angle. And increasingly, our young research scholars are finding it difficult and impossible to pursue their area of interest. They have to cater to the demands of these research bodies if they ever dream of getting assistance from them or sanction from them for doing research. And all these research institutes are now being pressurized by the ruling establishment to have people who would follow their dictate. So that's one. This ideology of majoritarian nationalism through curriculum syllabi and through selection of books which students are expected to read. For example, recently in Tamil Nadu, university withdrew a book by Arundhati Roy. The student wing of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad, objected to having it on the reading list. We have seen it with the books and writings by Professor Nandini Sundar herself in our university, in Delhi University, where it was claimed by the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh people that her chapters and her books spread the ideology of Naxalism and anti-nationalism. So universities are encouraged to organize events, mark days, and establish statues which would propagate the ideology of majoritarian Hindutva nationalism. So this is one. Secondly, how it's done? It's done by centralization. So the new education policy is proposing an apex body which would be chaired by the Prime Minister, which would effectively take away all autonomy from regulatory agency itself. And as it is, our universities have been robbed of whatever autonomy they had in deciding about the content of the curriculum, because 80% of the content of the curriculum is being decided by the University Grants Commission. And universities are allowed to have only 20% content of them by their faculty. So one can imagine what kind of freedom we have in deciding what to teach, and how to teach. It's also being done by other programs. For example, we have in India and Indian universities programs called refresher courses, which are organized to and are mandatory for university teachers of the lecturer level, assistant professor level, and associate professor level to go through. Now, in these refresher courses and orientation courses, ideologues, so-called ideologues of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh have now become the trainers. So they come and they pontificate and lecture, and this is what these assistant professors and associate professors are expected to go through for 15 days and 21 days, and it's seen as a legitimate training program, and it's happening in nearly all universities, in Delhi University, in Jawaharlal Nehru universities, in Jamia Millia Islamia, in Aligarh Muslim University, all universities. It's also happening through instrumentalization of higher education. For example, it's being said that universities are not creating employable people. So what they need to do is to generate employability through their programs and not idealize their programs. So they should not be ivory towers, and it is said as an attack on the earlier view of universities. So they are expected to perform the duty of providing employable people to the industry. Now, and this is seen as a legitimate demand. And so the objective of university is also to water down all their academic programs to suit the demands of employability. So this restriction on academic freedom is happening through different routes, and these are some of them which we try to point out to you. I'll stop here, and I think I'll take more in the question and answer session.
Thank you both. That was fascinating, and we really appreciate it. I guess we're opening the Vimeo chat to questions, but I'd like to start kind of with one of my own, and I'd like to sort of personalize the situation a bit, if you don't mind. The sort of precipitous decline that we've seen in India over the past 2 years is really not common, and obviously very disturbing. And I guess I'd just like to hear both of you share sort of your experience watching it take place. What were the early signs that you observed of the current challenges? Can you share any personal experiences that raised concerns for you about the direction things were heading in India?
Who would you like to go first? Sorry,
Well, it's up to the two of you. Nandini, why don't you start?
Okay. Well, I think the first sign was that for a long time in my university, we have not been able to have any seminars on Kashmir or on Naxalism. And I remember we were showing this film once on disappeared people in Kashmir, and the ABVP, which is the student wing of the RSS, went to attack, and our students actually had to patrol the boundaries of our campus to make sure that nobody came in and nobody jumped over the wall and tried to attack us and the speaker and the filmmaker who was presenting her film. We've not been allowed to have seminars on a variety of subjects, including things like Aadhaar, which is this ID card, or very innocuous things that any decent university should be having seminars on a variety of current events, right? And we've just not been allowed to have those. Personally, I have been disinvited from giving seminars at other universities. As Apurvanand said, my books have been taken off the syllabus of Delhi University. So this has been going on for quite a while now, and it's very visible in our own lives.
Thank you.
So my experience is similar to what Nandini just said. One of our celebrated writers, Bhisham Sahni, his centenary fell a few years back, and we wanted to show a film based on his novel. And my head of the department, who is a nice person, he explained to me that it would be very dangerous to screen it because it would be attacked by the Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad people. And he was not opposed to it, but he feared for the safety of students and the department property itself. In Chandigarh, Punjab University, when I was giving a talk on Gandhi, suddenly the members of and sympathizers of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh barged in, and they demanded that I shouldn't be allowed to speak because I was a traitor and I was anti-national. And after that, I learned that seminars stopped in the Department of Philosophy in Punjab University because the heads didn't want to take the risk of damaging their own seminar halls or getting the seminar halls damaged. I have seen people disinvited. I have seen chilling down of activities on campuses across India. I have seen teachers being suspended, for example, in Central University of Haryana and in a university in Jodhpur, Rajasthan. 2 women teachers were suspended from jobs for having dared to organize a play and a seminar. And this woman professor in Jodhpur remained in the state of suspension for 2 years. And so that is what is happening across India. And they say that you have to keep yourself restricted to the essential, that is classroom teaching. And you should not do these extra things, that is seminars, symposia. In Delhi University, for example, theater activities has stopped since 2016 because theater is seen as a potent medium to express so-called urban Naxal or left jihadi philosophy. So these are the things we are experiencing across India in state universities, in central universities, and in private universities as well. There is no dialogue between private university like Ashoka University or Jindal University or Shiv Nadar University and public university. And we know that private universities don't speak on these issues because they want to remain safe. They are private and they see public universities suffering. But we see no solidarity coming from the sphere of private universities. Secondly, if you talk about collaboration between international or foreign universities or Indian universities, what is the level of collaboration, and how an Indian university professor or teacher can take up a research project? For example, how can you talk about a figure like Aurangzeb or Akbar without angering the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh people? So an American professor will have a different book being taught in America, and her Indian edition won't have the information that her American edition, that the American edition of her book has. So this is something we are experiencing.
I mean, that's a really, both of you sort of powerfully framed, well, a number of issues, but I mean, the thing that stands out for me the most is self-censorship and how it plays out. Obviously, you both are very outspoken and eloquent, but clearly your colleagues are suffering, and the chill is manifest. So we have a number of questions from the audience. This is I guess for both of you. What is your prediction for the state of academic freedom in higher education in India 10 years from now, especially if the threats persist in the way that they're going? Purvanand, you were last, so Nandini, why don't you begin?
Well, apart from the fact of university faculty and students being attacked and restricted and so on, I think the biggest danger to the Indian higher education sector is the capture that we see of these institutions. It's like environmental damage. Once a university is damaged, it's very, very difficult to repair it unless there's some drastic purge or something. Because people who are appointed today, who are members of the RSS, will reproduce themselves for the next 30, 40 years. So we're actually talking of not just the next 10 years, but a very, very long period of decline. And what we see in public universities today is really a product of the 50s and 60s, when there was an attempt to set up public universities to give them autonomy, to give them academic freedom, which is why you have universities today which are able to dissent, where students are critical of what is happening. Then they have that ability to be thinking human beings. But that's really a product of the Nehruvian period, and universities down the line are going to be a product of a very different period, and really not universities in the way that we recognize them anymore.
Thank you. Purvanand?
Yes, it's not that everything is hunky-dory with our universities, has been hunky-dory with the universities last 6 decades or 7 decades. But universities in India and higher education institutions in India are the only space available to the young people where they come and mix freely and create what I call new kind of proximities. They are able to transcend uh, their caste and their class, and they create new friendships. So universities are very important for that purpose, not only for academic purpose, but also for this new kind, for creation of this new kind of society, uh, which questions hierarchical structures prevalent in the society. But what is happening now is reinforcing those hierarchical structures which are prevalent outside. Now, so universities are asked to be answerable to the society outside and not question the society outside. This is this is the biggest difference that has happened, I think, in last 10 years, 10 or 15 years, that universities are asked to listen to the society and not question them, and reproduce the society to escape or to uh, critique that our students have entered the very arena of university or higher education. This is the difference that has taken place in last 10 years or so.
It's almost the worst possible version of the ivory tower model. Yeah. So I'd like to ask, what role does culture, I mean, the culture of the universities themselves, play in pushing back against these very, very disturbing trends? I mean, there does seem to be a long tradition of academic freedom that still has something to say, and I'm just wondering how we can build that, if nothing else, among university populations. How can we imbue a sense of these are my rights, regardless of what the society or the government or anyone else says? As a student, as a professor, these are my rights. How do we build that within higher education spaces?
Okay, I'll go first again. I think student unions have been amazing, actually, across public universities in India. And if anybody has challenged this government, it has been students from public universities. And as you say, part of that is because of, historical structures where unions were legitimate, were active. And, in some universities like JNU or Jadavpur or the Film and Television Institute, there have been traditions where students have also been involved in, academic councils and so on. So the problem really is the ways in which unions are being delegitimized, the ways in which they are not being allowed representation in some universities. They've been banned altogether. And even the kind of traditions that teachers had of being represented in academic councils are being violated routinely. So structurally, attempts are being made to overturn existing systems through which students and teachers voiced dissent or participated in university activities.
I would second Nandini. So much of what was available to central universities, for example, university like Delhi University or JNU, was not available to universities like Patna University or state universities like Patna University. So that is one. That is why the culture of academic freedom is very, very weak in India traditionally in state universities. And that is why there is not an outcry nationally when universities like JNU or Delhi University or Jadavpur universities are attacked, because academic freedom is seen as an elitist concept, and state universities were deprived of it. For example, many state universities don't have the freedom to even appoint their own faculty, because they are a centralized mechanism to select and appoint and distribute faculty among these universities. So one can imagine why the very idea of academic freedom is under severe stress in India and doesn't have a domestic or local support. One can imagine that because there was no real democratization in Indian higher education scene to begin with. So that's one. But as Nandini explained, that the bulwark or the resistance, bulwark of resistance comes from students, and they are the hope, but they are under tremendous attack from the powers. They are being arrested. They are being called by special cell of police everywhere in Aligarh, in Delhi University, wherever they dare to speak out and speak out freely on the street. They are being jailed and being punished. So this is a message that is being sent out to not only the students, but also their parents who belong to lower income group, that once your sons and daughters engage in these activities, they would be jailed. And it would put you under severe stress, because how do you bail them out? It has also economic implications for parents. So this is the atmosphere that is being created in India. And the only resistance we can see is from the students who are, again, I would say, defenseless, because the faculty, citing the reasons of risk to their employment, they don't want to risk it, they don't want to get suspended, so they are going silent. And we expect students to perform this function, which is getting increasingly more and more or riskier and riskier each passing day. So I don't see, and I sound pessimist, I know, but I don't see any respite in near future unless the international community starts speaking up, unless it starts telling the Indian central authorities that we are not ready to do academic business with you unless you meet these requirements of academic freedom.
Can I come in there with just one point that the Indian government has just started this huge outreach program with Indian academics abroad, or diasporic academics, and it's sort of really it needs to be countered. There are some attempts, but by diasporic academics, but there needs to be a lot more international solidarity with this issue.
Well, you both just stole my next question, which is what do we do internationally? I would mention that, as I'm sure many people who are viewing this know, the UN Special Rapporteur for the Protection and Promotion of the Right to Freedom of Opinion and Expression recently acknowledged in a very significant report that student protest is an expression of academic freedom. That I think is a crucial tool in our arsenal in this conversation, about what does academic freedom mean? How do we explicitly talk about it within an international human rights and higher education frame? It's growing and developing, and I think these tools will be powerful for us going forward. Changing gears a bit, I noticed something that you both mentioned earlier. You used business types of words. I think Nandini, you referred to universities as business institutions. Apurvanand, you talked about employability, and I guess again, it is a bit of a shift in gears, but I would like to hear your thoughts on sort of concerns about neoliberalization of education and how that fits into this set of challenges, if you wouldn't mind.
Apurvanand, you go first.
No, you take the question first, and then my job is to second you.
We do a lot more than seconding, but Okay, well, in terms of universities as business institutions, I think, in terms of, just to kind of go back a bit, not just about neoliberalism, but about how universities or colleges have come into existence. It's an extreme higher education, especially in engineering, medicine, law, is an extremely kind of profitable field. And you have many at the sort of small town, rural area level, you have many emerging business families who then fund in education as an adjunct to their other businesses, in order to make money. And you now also have a number of corporates, like you have Vedanta University, Bennett Coleman University, all of these coming in basically as extensions of their corporate wing, right? So at one level, education itself is being commodified through these large corporates. Secondly, in terms of neoliberalism, in most of these institutions, there is no contract, there's no security of tenure, it's all contractual, even in the best private universities. And in public universities, where historically we've had secure tenure, increasingly jobs are being contractualized. People are temporary. And it's extremely hard if you're a young temporary faculty to say anything that's critical about your head of department or about the university authority. So that's a clear way in which neoliberalism and downsizing actually reduces academic freedom.
Thank you, Nandini. Before you respond to that, Apurvan, I just wanted to mention that we are about 4 minutes away from a hard stop, unfortunately. Wish we had more time, but please go ahead.
I agree with Nandini. What universities are being encouraged to do is to have self-financed courses. These are called self-financed courses. To introduce more and more courses which would be utility-based, which would cater to the demand of the market, but they are to be funded by the students themselves. So faculty, appointment of faculty and selection of students, etc. All of this, now this is a structure which is quite different from what we see today now. And so universities would resemble more and more central universities now. The state universities, which are full of self-financed courses. These are not really academic courses. These are watered down, a very crude version of vocational courses. They don't impart any skills. So the buzzword of higher education policy making is creating skills and not knowledge. Knowledge is a word which has been replaced by skills. We are not saying that skills are not important, but to replace the word knowledge by skills is something which is very, very striking, and which is the hallmark of policy making of this government, and which has been advocated by agencies like FICCI and other industry bodies, which have presented their own vision of higher education in India. And it applies not only to research and education, teaching in social sciences or humanities, but also in life sciences and natural sciences. So we have not talked about that, and that's an area which demands attention. What kind of research projects are being proposed there? They are also to cater to the so-called nationalist demands, ideological demands of this regime. So a mix of pressure of neoliberal economy and nationalism is what our universities and higher education bodies are facing now.
Well, thank you very much. This has been absolutely fascinating and way, way, way too short. Thank you both so much for your expertise. Thank you for sharing your time. Thanks to everybody in the audience, especially those who shared or liked questions and helped enrich our discussion. Our apologies that we could not get to all the questions. Again, this has been extremely enriching to me, and I know that it has been to my colleagues and all the people watching. With that, I would like to ask everyone to please stay tuned for a brief call to action related to our panel discussion.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Bell, and I'm the Advocacy Program Associate at Scholars at Risk. As reported in Scholars at Risk's Free to Think 2020, a growing number of scholars and government critics in India have been prosecuted or face charges under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. This act purportedly seeks to prevent terrorism or other threats to national security and state sovereignty. But the growing number of scholars who have been arrested under the act raises concern that authorities are misapplying the law to shut down activism, dissent, and other nonviolent expressive activity. Professor Gokhara Konda Naga Sai Baba is one such scholar. Professor Sai Baba is an English literature professor at Delhi University and a human rights activist who has worked on behalf of vulnerable populations in India. He was arrested in May of 2014 under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act and is serving a life sentence. Over the past 6.5 years, Professor Sai Baba's health has severely deteriorated in prison, and he has repeatedly been denied medical care. Professor Sai Baba suffers from post-polio syndrome, which inhibits the use of his legs, life-threatening acute pancreatitis, impacted gallbladder stones, cardiac complications, hypertension, and more. Scholars at Risk is especially concerned about Professor Sai Baba's well-being with the spread of COVID-19, as prisons don't have the capacity to uphold social distancing. And with so many existing medical conditions, Professor Sai Baba is extremely vulnerable to the virus. Please join us in calling on Indian authorities to release Professor Sai Baba from prison. Send the message that nonviolent academic work and human rights expression are not terrorism. They are a scholar's duty. Take action for Professor Sai Baba today. Tweet #FreeGNSaiBaba and visit scholarsatrisk.org/action to sign a letter on his behalf. Every letter reminds authorities that Professor Sai Baba is not forgotten, that the world is watching. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, for that important plea. Thank you again to everyone in the audience. As we noted earlier, this session is a part of Scholars at Risk's virtual conference, Free to Think 2020. I invite you to visit the conference page for the schedule and links to other sessions. A recording of this session will be available soon and posted on the STAR website. We would welcome your help in sharing the link when it's available with those you think might be interested. Thank you very much.